So welcome everyone to Friends Let's Discuss episode 14.
13.
13? Oh, no,
14.
are you messing
Wait,
with me?
it is 14.
It's good.
Yeah. See, look at me. I'm going to edit that part out. Nobody's going to see that part.
No, I think we need to keep it in. Because last week I got it wrong. It was episode, I was like, it's episode 15. And you're like, no, it's 13. I was like, damn it.
I can't even get my edits right, my episodes right.
So all right, love. How are you doing? I decided to wear yellow today because I was like, it's been a tough week in the world of news and media. So I was like, let's inject a little bit of sunshine in the dress code.
Yeah.
But before we begin, how has your week been going, love?
My week, how's it been? It's been good. I don't even know what to highlight. What's been my highlight? We had a nice barbecue yesterday. My cousin came over with his son and his wife. And it was just good to chill, talk music. I don't know if I can show you. Look at this.
Whoa!
So
that's amazing.
My cousin has always been a DJ, and we've always spoken music. We've always spoken about music, and he is 4 years older than me, and even as a kid, he was so passionate about music. He would make me literal cassette tapes, right? So mixtapes, but literal mixtapes, not just stuff you see. And so obviously in those days, you would get a tape, and if it was good, play it constantly. And so there's songs from 95 that he put on this mixtape for me that I still love today. And I always think about it's one of those things that you don't appreciate at the time, but it was such a massive gift because it really kindled that passion for music in me without me even knowing. And so we've always spoken about music. He's always been passionate about music, and we were sat talking about music yesterday, and I didn't realize he was sort of asking me whether or not I wanted this. And this is like a mixer for what DJs use to blend songs together. And I've always thought that would be so cool to be able to just mix music and have a DJ set, but I've never thought about buying one for myself because I thought I just never had the time. And so he's talking to me and he's asking me if I've ever done it, if I'd ever been interested in it, if I've ever thought about doing it. I was like, yeah, but and I tried a couple times, I'm not good at it. And he's like, okay. Then he goes out and comes back with this big bag and was like, pulls this out, and I was like, I'm gonna leave it here for you. And I'm like, huh? What do you mean? It's like, look, just if you want to play a bit, practice, see how you get on. But if you don't, you don't. He was like, you got too much good taste for that not to become something that you do. And literally got given this yesterday. So
oh my god, I'm so excited, dude. This is genius. I know your music taste, so if you're gonna start mixing stuff, I'm gonna be a very happy person.
Nothing's come of it yet. Literally I got it yesterday, so I've not even plugged it into anything. But yeah, it's here. So let's see what happens.
Right. When I come over, I'm definitely having a go on that, right?
I need to work out how to make it work, But yeah, that's been the highlight of my week. So, that might be another hobby. Might be competing with podcasts.
Yeah, that's amazing, mate. I that's totally allowable. Totally fine. We can cut this one short. It's all good. That's amazing. Yeah, no, I can't compete with that actually. So maybe we should just move on. Yeah, it's just been super busy at work, to be honest, this week. So I haven't really had much time for really anything else. Although yesterday I did go and see my aunt and uncle, which is always really good fun. This is modern marriage, I guess. But my aunt is going off on holiday for a couple of weeks because she knows that my uncle is going to be obsessed with the World Cup. And operating on a PST EST time zone, so she's kind of just you know what, let me just go hang out with my friends and go do stuff, which I thought was a very genius move.
Yeah, that's an experienced wife there. She's just I'm not going to even try to compete. Exactly. I know who's going to win this.
Yeah, exactly. And as a are you going to be watching the World Cup, love?
But you know what, I was I feel so dirty for watching any of the highlights because I'm it's being run by some of the most corrupt people in the world, but it's football and it's it just works. You can't I'm
Yeah.
so like, oh, it's like you've kidnapped my loved one, and now I have to. I'm gonna pay whatever demand you make because I love it that much. And so I'm watching clips and I'm seeing things, and I'm like, I don't want to enjoy this, but it's hard not to. I even looked up. So one of the teams is Curacao, as one of the smallest nations in the world. And it's
Yeah.
the first time they've taken part in the World Cup. And I saw one of my favorite Arsenal players, Miles Lewis Skelly. He was wearing the away kit for Curacao whilst he was training. I was like, that's a beautiful kit. Let me see how much it costs. Freaking £80. I was like, okay, I don't need to. I don't need to
What?
wear Curacao kit. Like,
Curacao?
like,
Wowza.
and this is the thing: the shirts are made by Adidas.
Oh.
So obviously Adidas knows that they can just charge full price to like a UK market. And so it's like if you want an official Curacao kit, you got to pay 80 quid. I'm just like, I can't, no. I, I print my own t-shirts. It's fine. Like I'm not giving you that type of money.
Do you know what? And I'm with you, love, because even me, because you guys are like, I'm like morally, it's wrong. Like even this week, was this FIFA guy, UEFA guy, that ball guy who's part of Trump's peace board, the really openly corrupt one. He was basically really dismissive and denigrated journalists who were asking about the referee who had been denied, a top referee who had been denied entry into the US to facilitate the games. Really condescending, dismissive. But then speaking with my uncle yesterday, he's just like, "Oh, the England games are really good times." I'm like, "Oh, England, I can't not watch England. I mean, come on, like I have to watch England." And then I was like, "Oh wait, Curacao? I don't think I've ever seen Curacao in the World Cup before. Oh, I wonder what that would be like." This
Yeah,
is how they get you, bruv. This
I
is the
agree.
problem. This is how they own the tech companies have us because we're on social media. We need Google Maps to survive because we don't know how to use A to Z or whatever anymore. And, these arse wipes in FIFA and UEFA and these really corrupt organizations know that they've stolen the game that we all love and they've corrupted it. But then you're kind of like, oh no, what if I don't? Ooh. It's a problem I'm having in Gail's Bakery, by the way.
So yeah,
Yes.
so I had literally this conversation with one of my friends who's a massive football fan, and I asked him like, at what point will you step away from watching the World Cup? And he was like, it's really tough because big football fan, blah blah blah. But Gail's Bakery couldn't care less. Like, I'm not going into Gail's, not going near Gail's. I don't care about Gail's, and I'm like, I hear you, but it's almost like it's that thing of I don't care that much about bread from Gales for it to even matter. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I was to boycott Gales Bakery wouldn't know. It wouldn't move the dial at all. But yeah, it's that weird thing, isn't it?
That's the thing with our morality, I suppose. It's so difficult as well because all of these things, these issues are so pervasive. The challenge is are we really testing our morality if we're only testing it on things that we don't really care about? The real test, I suppose, is when it's the things that we really care about, right? Because initially I actually wanted to go for the World Cup this year. I
Yeah.
really was keen to go.
Oh
I'd
yeah.
love,
You love
yeah,
the US. You've got a long-standing relationship with the US.
that's it. Yeah. And I also wanted to go to use it as an opportunity to go to Canada and Mexico. But last year, when I started seeing all the nonsense that was happening, with the corruption and then the board of peace, et cetera, I was just like, yeah, no fucking way am I spending my money. And then it obviously is Trump's racism and xenophobia became more and more ridiculous. You're just like, I don't even know if I'd be allowed in the country because we've got a podcast. Do you know what I mean? Like, in these democratic states that we live in now, I don't know, like we were saying last week, like, are we really free, love? And I think there's been some really great, very thought-provoking discussions that have been had about what's been happening this week on that.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you want to start with? I guess we could start with um the demonstrations, the anti-racism demonstrations, but maybe we need to take a step back to um what happened in Belfast, because I guess it's all tied together.
Yeah. And it's desperately sad as well, love. So for those perhaps outside of the country who don't know, essentially a Sudanese man, I think, who was an asylum seeker who'd crossed the border between, there's no border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. crossed. He stabbed a local in Belfast. Some others intervened to luckily try and prevent further attack. But essentially, then the riots all kicked off. And the racists use it as, and despite the victim of the family of the victim saying, please do not use this as an excuse to go and commit violence. We recognize the contribution that many, many migrants are making in this country. We literally couldn't survive without them. The far right, obviously instigated by the usual scumbags like Robinson and Musk. Incidentally, Musk, who sits in America, and Robinson, who at this point in time was sitting in Russia, meeting with Musk's allegedly paedophile father, were instigating violence in Belfast. So then what happened was the violence was really egregious, actually, love. Like it was more violent than we saw in Southampton. Homes were firebombed, cars were firebombed, people were seen fleeing. Basically, the police had to rescue, like little kids were pulled out of their beds and were fleeing because apparently the far right had a list of homes where people who were non-white Irish lived, and therefore they were targeting them. So the phrase that a number of people use this week is pogroms. So pogroms are, I guess, movements which attack people based on some kind of specific ethnicity or identity with the purpose of committing violence to force them to leave or flee or be out of their homes, essentially. But even as I'm talking, I'm trying not to cry because the image of those women, these two women with a little kid, he can't have been more than 6, being like ushered by the police as you see this backdrop of people with hoods with their faces covered just throwing fire bombs and stuff is one of the most horrendous things I've seen. And I say that as someone who's saying that locally, because obviously watching the violence being committed in Palestine and Sudan and the Congo is horrific. Seeing violence committed on your own doorstep is very hard to take, love. It really is.
You know, my wife was looking at the news and literally started crying. And it's one of those things where I was like, it's okay to take a break. You know, you don't have to consume the news to the point where you're literally crying. So like, I just encourage her to put her phone down at that point because, you know, I'm pretty thick-skinned and I'm pretty aware of like my social media consumption, and I have a sense of when I need to just stop and go into the garden, literally smell the roses, like stare at my pond and just like try and, you know, find some equilibrium. But the stories coming out of this, like, we'll try and take our time over this because it's so dense, it's so packed, and there's so many things that should be highlighted that I don't know, we'll probably miss some of it, but we'll try and take our time and cover it as comprehensively as we can because I think it's worth taking a bit of time over it. So it's important to say that whilst the victim suffered grievous injuries, he is stable. So he hasn't lost his life. He did lose his eye, I believe.
Yeah.
So very serious injuries. It sounds like the Sudanese guy was coming from like a place that was, I guess, war torn is probably the most plain way to describe it, which brings to mind the fact that, you know, many nations have, as a result of what the US is doing, that have pulled back from the aid that they give to these countries and pulled back from the support that they give to these countries to stop them being destabilized. And so I think what we're seeing is like when nations with the financial resources stop supporting other nations with less financial resources, you have an influx of migration and you have people who have suffered some amount of trauma arriving on your doorstep, whether you like it or not. Not to say that these actions are right. Like I regardless of your mental health, there's no excuse for attacking someone
No.
and nearly taking their life. But I want to highlight that, like, when we take aid away from these countries, countries that historically European nations, US, have already destabilized, who historically have put in political leadership which doesn't have the country's best interest at heart, some of the consequences will arrive at your doorstep. And so we do have to take, as a nation, a more compassionate view of the world. When we have the resource to do so, we should be helping other countries, and we should be making sure that those countries are stable. The opposite to what we've been doing a lot of time, because it's benefited us to go in and take resources out of those countries. I think the other thing is, and again, there's lots to it, so I will pause and allow Mira to take on it as well. One of the things is, these weren't friendly, peaceful protests. They're literally burning down buildings. And so for me, the media hasn't condemned these actions harshly enough. And of course, someone's been attacked, and that has been the sequence that's taken place. The pace at which people have said, okay, we're not just going to protest, we're going to riot, we're going to burn things down, we're going to destroy things in, I have to assume, their own neighborhood. Like, it's totally brainless. So I would have to believe that people are coming from outside of the community and doing this as well. And we've spoken about it. It's very difficult to prove. But I have to assume that this is being fueled and flamed by foreign states. There's no way to prove it. It's only an assumption. I've got no basis for it. So I don't want to spread unfounded conspiracy theories, but we know, having seen Tommy Robinson go to Russia, meet Elon Musk's family father, stay at a luxury hotel. If you know anything about the Russian government, about Vladimir Putin, there's no way that this happens without his say-so. So again, I can't prove that Tommy Robinson is working with the Russian government, but if he was, this might be what it looks like. And he's doing it openly, he's doing it in your face. So I can only say, like, look, these guys they don't think you can add 2 and 2 together and get 4. Because otherwise they would at least attempt to hide what they're doing. But it's none of that. And so, just think about what action. Just take your time to sort of say, who is this helping? Like, who's winning out of this?
And the thing is, love, you can't prove it. I can't prove it. But the Byline Times can sure do their best to prove it. And what's interesting is, just before we came out with the podcast today, the Byline Times have released an article. Essentially, so firstly, to Fabian's point around Putin not knowing, or always knowing, because he does. One of the reasons that people put, I think, like Robinson and even the Tate brothers were in Russia, is because Russia has an event similar to Davos, which is like Russia's Davos, essentially. And then they try and get as many Western influences to come in, basically. You have Tommy Robinson, as Fabian was saying, who was in Russia this week. And this organization, so it's a network of neo-Nazi anti-Semitists who have openly been promoted by Tommy Robinson, the organization supported by Putin, and it's an organization that's part of the Russian state-linked campaign to sow division across the UK and Europe. You don't have to believe me. Tommy Robinson, apparently, in an X post to his 1.9 million followers, after trying to capitalize on Henry Nowak's tragic murder. So Russian nationalists at Academis 1721 paying their respects to Henry Novak and sending a message of united patriotism. This organization is a Kremlin-linked far-right organization. So now we have discord on British streets being fueled by organizations, as Fabian says, that are ultimately linked to the Russian government. So foreign influences, so outside influences. And again, you have to really, I think the thing that I always feel so puzzled about Robinson, which I guess And we will share this, by the way. So I've edited the clip and stuff. So we will feed this back into the edit so you can go and look for it yourself as well. You don't have to believe us. Please do read the article, as we always say. But the thing that kind of blows my mind about Tommy Robinson, the great patriot that he purports to be, he's the patriot that wants to promote Britishness, British values, and yet he's more than happy to go to an agent that is a country that's condemned by the current state. So obviously we're not exactly friends with Russia at the moment. We have evidence that Russia has tried to also intervene in the Brexit vote, also in Trump's first election, incidentally. Happy to go to Russia. He's a British patriot that's happy to support a foreign country and link himself to a foreign country. He's a guy that purportedly hates Arabs and yet spends a disproportionate amount of time in Dubai in the UAE, and is also purported to get funding from the UAE as well. So happy to take money from the Arabs, don't like the Arabs at the same time. You want to talk about Britishness and patriotism, but Tommy Robinson has been sued for false allegations against a young kid whose life was completely upturned, had to pay legal fees, declared himself bankrupt to avoid paying those legal fees. He set up limited companies, as reported by the Byline Times and the Times, to essentially avoid paying taxes. So you set up a limited company, you earn money through the company, and then you attempt to close it down without any filings or reporting, basically paying zero corporation taxes effectively. So the great British patriot that is going after people in this country that is linked to extremist organizations, that is linked to foreign actors and foreign influences, that is happily taking money from the Arabs and the Muslims while talking about the Arabs and the Muslims in this country, who isn't paying his fair share or his taxes to help support, I would imagine, a number of the people that are benefiting from the state in his group, that are benefiting from benefits, etc., and avoiding paying taxes and trying to do dodgy things to avoid it. Is it not that he is just another grifter con merchant that will go wherever the money is? There is no moral authority here. He doesn't give a bugger about Britain, about your rights, about your life and the cost of living, because if he did, he would practice what he preached. He would not, exactly to we were saying even earlier in the podcast, he would not be taking money or aligning himself with foreign actors or taking Arab money or Muslim money. That's somebody who truly believes in what they're doing. So that's why I think I really, really struggle with all of this, not least, love, because as we've seen in the news recently, there's a very high case of violence against women and girls in Belfast, in Northern Ireland. Most of those instances are perpetrated by people that the women know, i.e. they're not immigrants and they're not asylum seekers. Belfast is, Northern Ireland, is 97% white. There's less than 3% of people that will identify as ethnically something else, effectively, and less so for asylum seekers. I think it's even 1%, less than 1% of asylum seekers as part of Britain land in Northern Ireland. Again, yeah, and that's the other thing. Sorry, I forgot one thing. So Tommy Robinson talking about violence against women and girls, but hanging out with Elon Musk's father, who's up on charges of child sexual exploitation and abuse, according to the New York Times last year, who has essentially had a sexual relationship and fathered 2 children with his stepdaughter, who is the daughter of the woman that he was married to for 18 years. So yes, we want to talk about violence against women and girls, Tommy. That's why you're encouraging everyone to take the streets. And yet you're perfectly happy, as very much as part of the Epstein class, to hang out with pedophiles. You're perfectly happy to not really comment on the fact that there were young girls that were raped by white kids for the last couple of weeks in the cases that were flagged. That Mohammed was killed by a white guy. Didn't really flag that at all. Didn't really flag the fact that 1 in 5 of the protesters / rioters in the Southport riots were convicted of domestic violence offences, not least because a similar statistic of those last week's violence in Southampton were committed by almost like career criminals, a lot of them as well.
Yeah.
Make it make sense, love.
Thankfully, in a rare moment of, I guess, clarity and lucidity, the government have arrested Tom Robinson. I should say he has been detained at the Heathrow Airport, so on his way back from Russia very soon, on counter-terrorism offences. So, I mean, let's see where that leads to.
Yeah, and I wanted to flag, love. So I was saying to Fabian earlier, so I wanted to dig up the Terrorism Act essentially to try and understand what it means effectively. So again, we will put this up. But essentially, the Terrorism Act is the use or threat of one or more of the actions listed, which I'll tell you, designed to influence the government or a governmental organization or to intimidate the public. The use or threat must also be for the purpose of advancing a political, religious, racial, or ideological cause. Actions include serious violence against a person, serious damage to property, endangering a person's life, other than the person committing the action, of course, creating a serious risk to the health and safety of the public, or action designed to seriously interfere or disrupt an electronic system. I would argue that 4 out of 5 of those things that he would be guilty of. I would say obviously racial and ideological cause, and technically religious as well, because he's apparently branded himself as a Christian. Although I don't know, I think Jesus would probably have something to say about that, to be honest, because I'm not sure how he does that. But yeah, so essentially he was arrested under the terrorism offences and his devices were seized. And now he's setting up a crowdfunding appeal for his legal fees. This is the same person who I think they estimate, one of the papers estimates sitting on about £3 million.
Yeah, but he wants the public to pay for his legal fees. Yeah. If
Wow.
you are the sort of person that does want to contribute to a GoFundMe, one of the things I saw, and Mira didn't mention this, so this might be news to you as well. There's a channel called SB Mowing, and essentially it's a guy who he goes around and mows the lawns of people who are unable to mow the lawn themselves, have become overgrown. It's based in the US. And he came across this woman, elderly lady, whose partner passed away, who was struggling to pay her rent on the place she lives, had issues with her dental care, and as no surprise, her lawn had become significantly overgrown. So he's gone in, mowed the lawn, as he often does. He came with his dad as well. Shared the clip on his social profiles, and set up a GoFundMe for this lady whose name I believe is Debbie. So within a day, there were 13,000 people who had donated, and they had raised $400,000. So amazing. An average of sort of $30 per person, which is like not a huge amount for an average person, but significant. And so now she has close to $500,000 being donated to her. Give your money to someone like Debbie, not to someone like Tommy. Okay, like people who are much worthy of your money. So if you want to do a GoFundMe or donate to a GoFundMe, please give it to someone like that.
Because all he's going to do is, even if he's charged under and needs to pay legal fees, he just declare himself bankrupt again anyway, guys. So don't waste your money. Honestly, like go treat yourself and your family to a very expensive meal out at the moment. But yeah, I'm with you on that one. I did see that clip actually, love. For a second, I honestly was holding my breath because I thought you were gonna say, and it turned out that this old lady was actually a career fraudster or somebody had stolen the money. And I was thinking, oh no, please God, let it not be so.
No, no.
Like, because it
I
was so
was, I
sweet.
was trying to inject some positive news
I
into
was
what is
like,
often like a negative story because you're so
oh,
conditioned. Mira.
what's gonna happen here? And I was saying on the clip, because it's a really lovely thing, love. I 100%. It's beautiful. It was incredibly sad to hear a story. Essentially, her husband had cancer, which he eventually passed away from, which is also why she then obviously stopped working. She didn't have income, etc., etc. But guys, respectfully, instead of crowdfunding, why don't you elect a government that wants to bring in universal bloody healthcare and wants to take care of your elderly when they experience situations like this? And have a safety net system for poverty, people that experience poverty. Because I feel like the thing, I know we're going off on a tangent here, sorry, but I feel like the thing with America that fascinates me is the Americans don't like the idea of universal because unless they know the person personally, they don't want to help them. They don't want to create a universal, but I watched this show called Hometown, which I do love. And I'm always fascinated by the generosity of the people in that show. So, like helping their neighbors, blah, blah, blah. But that state is a heavy Republican state, and it always has been. I think it always will be. So I find it a really fascinating thing. Like, you're okay because you're helping your neighbor and you know them personally. You saw this lovely lady and you saw the struggle, so you want to help her. But you don't want to just have the system create something which is a safety net because you may not know person 152 in Wichita who may need help personally. So like, why would I want to help them? Because they're probably screwing the system or screwing the state and it's just this really strange. I don't know if this is what we don't sort of have that. Well, at least we haven't really had that here because we've always been really proud of having a national healthcare system where we want to support people, where we have a safety net with the benefit system, where we have a state pension system that actually can look after people. So I've always struggled. I was so puzzled with that ideology that they seem to have.
I feel like in America, they're so proud of this idea that you can be a self-made millionaire, self-made success, that it's like they don't want anyone else to do it. And so you almost got a system where you're competing against each other, you're competing against your fellow man. And I feel like it's a complete fallacy. Like, I don't think anyone is entirely self-made. And I know a lot of people who work hard will feel like offended by that statement. But you can only be a success if the environment you're in allows you to be successful. And most of the self-made people that we put on pedestals have had starts from the beginning. I saw a documentary on Bill Gates, and they were talking about how his mum was friends with the CEO of IBM. And so the first big contract he got was through IBM because his mum was like was like some sort of like socialite, and so was able to sort of say, why don't you help my son out? And you look at so many of the most successful people in the US and they've had a similar experience. I think Steve Jobs, I think his neighbor was the CEO of HP, Hewlett Packard. And so, like, imagine being able to go down the road, knock on the door of your neighbor, and have a conversation about how to get into, technology industry. Like, all of these people have had massive helping hands. And by the way, I didn't know. I have to let me just check this, and maybe we'll edit this bit out. But do you know the name that Steve Jobs was given at birth?
No?
So, everybody recognizes this Steve Jobs. His birth name. So the point I'm going to make is that he's born to immigrants. So his father's name was Abdul Fattah Jan and so his birth name was Abdul Latif Jan. So like this is this is like a
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, and this is one of the weird things where people obviously are like, that's an inconvenient truth. Doesn't align with the story we want to tell about how Americans have made America. It's like immigrants made America.
Immigrants into America. I mean, it literally, from the time of its inception, creation, independence, it's all been immigrants and, well, frankly, slave labor and genocide. But we probably won't want to talk about that today. But yeah, like I remember I think it was a couple of years ago. I remember Trevor Noah talking about this on the Daily Show. I think Kim Kardashian had basically just said, "Listen, you can all be as successful as me. You just need to work hard." Sort of conveniently forgetting the fact that her father was an extremely prominent and high-profile attorney who very famously was O.J. Simpson's defense attorney that had a very high stature and place within the LA community, which then consequently opened doors that some kid who grew up in an estate in in some poor area of London or Peckham, or some kid who grew up on an estate in close to Skid Row would never have had those like opportunities and the doors to be open for them. Michael Dell and Jeff Bezos, we've spoken before, both had seed funding from their parents to be able to start their businesses and their companies. So yeah, I think it's a complete, and not least, we spoke about Elon last week, so I'm not going to bother with that. But I think we all know that Elon also has come from significant money. So let's not kid ourselves. But yeah, I think that whole fallacy with the American dream is a fascinating one. And maybe it does tie as well, love, back to this concept of neoliberalism. So this idea that it's the individual has to work hard, the individual has to succeed, even though, as we've seen in the particularly last 50 years, the die is stacked really against you, like hugely, hugely against you. And yeah, so and I understand. So like I empathize. I don't empathize or support with the rioters because I think, frankly, a brown person could have dropped a cup on the floor and you would have found an excuse to be able to go and commit these gravely violent and horrific acts. Frankly, I think it's disgusting. That's straight up. It's gross and disgusting. I empathize with people who feel disillusioned by our governments and the government that's supposed to be acting for us. As we spoke about on the podcast last week, we're not really free, let's be honest. I think we've seen many instances about that, which we'll obviously speak to this week. I think the funniest thing I saw this week was Nigel Farage talking about anti-establishment. So this is Nigel Farage, who is a multi-millionaire, educated at some of the top private schools in the country, went on to become a city banker, who then became a career politician as a member of the European Parliament and collected a hefty salary for that, who then went on to align himself with the MAGA movement, which is currently destroying America under Trump. He and Trump are best friends, who is supposedly anti-establishment, but is more than happy to accept personal donations to the tune of £5 million from wealthy billionaires from across the pond who don't live in the UK, incidentally, who's anti-establishment despite being a career politician and super rich and super part of the cabal and aligned himself with the Epstein class. He's appeared in the Epstein files many, many times. So again, I would really implore people to think about what anti-establishment actually means, because I would have thought that anti-establishment means that you're fed up of the current system of government, which is more attuned to reflecting the interests of foreign countries and their corporate donors than looking after the people in this country, which is the problem that we've had, which is the problem we continue to have. And we've seen examples of that this week. I don't know what you think, love.
Well, I mean, we were talking about corporate donors and how foreign states are able to influence, the UK government. One of the things I didn't realize is that, and again, it's one of these rabbit holes that I'm about to go down that I haven't gone down yet. But so I was trying to look at like the list of UK political donations that come from outside of the UK, and legally, direct foreign donations are banned, right? But the concern is that like indirect routes via UK registered companies may be coming that are funded from overseas sources. And so at the moment, that's a loophole that is widely known but has remained open. And so you can't like definitively say that this donation has come from a foreign state because it's coming through like UK companies. So again, we spoke about the Tony Blair Institute and how something like 300 million has come from Oracle CEO Larry Ellison, thank you, who, depending on, what the stock market says, he's either fourth or fifth richest person in the world, right? So there's no reason for him to be interested in the Tony Blair Institute necessarily. But for 300 million to go in that direction, it's an insane amount of money, right? And so again, as a result, we've seen things where Tony Blair is sort of questioning, like, the need for zero emissions and things like this. It's a weird system where you have to sort of wonder why things are allowed to happen, but then unfortunately the obvious answer is money, and we come back to it all the time. And so until we purge the political system of money, it's never going to be a fair system. And so there's no, at the moment, it's like, it just feels like there's not a clear answer on what we do and where we go from here.
And we have to do that because America has a bigger issue as well, right? Because this is what Bernie Sanders and a lot of the Democrats, at least, are talking about now, which is foreign influence. So they have essentially they have legislation called Citizens United, which essentially was supposed to allow citizens, so individuals, to donate money to political parties. So it felt like you were part of the process. The reality was it is hugely corrupted by corporations and very, very wealthy individuals that have basically bought the American political system. So you can see that all over. Like, we don't have time to go into it today. There's a lot of great podcasts that cover this in vast amounts of detail, not least because you have AIPAC, which is the American Israeli Political Action Committee, that have donated considerable sums of money to candidates who then turn out to be pro-Israel, ignore the genocide. And by that, when I'm saying that in the foreword, it's because it's okay to support Israel or, frankly, any other, whatever you think ideologically that aligns to the interests of your people, but you are supporting this government at the expense of the Palestinians. You're ignoring a genocide that's taking place, and that's kind of one of the big problems. In the UK, to Fabian's point, we have obviously things like the Tony Blair Institute is a very influential figure that's, again, being funded by people who have interests. So Larry Ellison is the single largest private donor to the Israeli Defense Force, which is the army of Israel, effectively. He also, you've got donations that are being provided to our political parties. So like Fabian says, essentially what's happening is Reform, I believe, have set up a limited company, and the donations that they're receiving are coming through the limited company to essentially bypass the rules effectively. And again, there's a huge disconnect between the 15 to 20 million in donations that Reform have received to the £290,000 that the Green Party have received. And if you're wondering what they do with that, the thing is that money can be used to put social media advertisements and papers and flyers and leaflets in people's doors, and it can get people platformed into certain news outlets or organizations because you can pay for that to happen, and you can pay influencers and people to go and speak to your cause and say what you're saying. And not least because obviously GB News, which is funded by another multimillionaire, is also effectively been rebranded the Reform News Channel, because it's just full of nonsense and Reform talking points. But yeah, and I think that's what's quite scary enough. So for example, this week, right, in the spirit, we should come back as well. So if I redirect, please do come back. But like this week, what really troubled me this week is, so essentially they were called the Elbit 25, and they were essentially a group of 25 folks that broke into the Elbit Systems factory, and Elbit being an Israeli defense company that manufactures weapons, so like drones and missiles and things as well. So anyway, they broke into the factory. They also attacked a plane. I think it was a RAF Norton. So they graffitied a helicopter, essentially, right? So 6 of those people were tried for criminal damage this week. However, after the jury had ruled that they had committed criminal damage, the judge then appended a terrorism charge onto their sentencing. Now, they weren't tried under terrorism charges, i.e. the jury wasn't asked to see if they committed terrorism. The judge himself just decided to sort of add it on. And the thing that's been super interesting, and again, we will share this as we mentioned in the terrorism. So essentially what he said is, so announcing his finding of a terrorist connection under Section 69 of the Sentencing Act, Johnson said, "I'm sure that each defendant's offence of criminal damage involves serious damage to property, was designed to intimidate the UK government and a section of the public, Elbit employees, and those of other businesses linked to Elbit, and was for the purpose of advancing a political ideological cause." Now, if you look at the terrorism legislation, there is a line in there, which, as I mentioned earlier, which refers to criminal damage for the intent of influencing a political or ideological cause. Now, I would like to unpick this, and if there are any lawyers who are significantly more qualified than me, because I'm not a lawyer in this, I would love to understand this. So, like, for example, guys, intimidate the UK government and a section of the public. So firstly, intimidate how exactly? So Elbit Systems, which is a private business, a defense contractor, they went in, they pushed over things, they hit a few drones with a hammer. What exactly did that do to the UK government? Because the UK government has done sweet FA in terms of changing their position on the genocide in Palestine, despite the tons of protests and letters and the opinion of the great British public, right? So let's not, firstly, there's that. That's one thing. The second thing is for the purpose of advancing a political ideological cause. So just so I understand this correctly, opposing a genocide is an ideological cause for which you can be charged under terrorism offences. Am I getting that right?
Democracy.
In a democracy, it's just so I'm super clear, because I was saying to Fabian earlier, the bit that I find is really scary because it's such a broad statement when you look at the legislation. Again, not a lawyer, but to me it seems like a very broad statement. If the purpose of protest is that you're free to hold your government to account, because at the end of the day the government is to act in the interest of the people, are we now saying that if the government is okay with fossil fuel companies, with genocide, with, I don't know, the death penalty, I don't know, whatever it is, if we're saying that we as a people wake up and we finally say, like, hold on a second, I think the problem in our country is probably the billionaire Epstein class and the financial institutions that support and benefit from them, etc., etc. So when we throw some paint at a JP Morgan building now, does that mean we can be tried under terrorism offenses? If we push back and we say, sorry, government, we don't believe in your ideological position because that's not what we voted for, and you are now going off in a different direction, does that mean when we say to the government, we take to the streets and we walk the streets and we protest, are they now going to say we can't do that? Or is it because, and if someone throws something, so in that vast group of protesters, someone throws a bottle at a building and then they're like, oh, see, this is like serious violence that's being, like, how slippery a
Yeah.
slope is this, love?
Yeah, there can be riots in Belfast. And it's like, we're not going to get any of these guys, so I guess it's just send somebody to clean it up,
Terrorism lab. So again, if you want to talk about, like, technically the terrorism legislation, committing violence against a person, committing serious damage to a building for a racial or ideological cause. I'm sorry. So are you trying to tell me all the Southport rioters, the Southampton rioters, and the Belfast rioters, surely they should be all tried as terrorists as well? Like, help me, somebody, please, for the love of God, help me make this make sense, because I just find it so scary. And the thing is, we're supposed to have, I mean, it's not really a Labour government, honestly, because they're bought by their donors as well, right? And foreign influence. But anyway, whatever the government is, the challenge is, people, when you bring in a reform government that are very openly like MAGA or aligned with MAGA, etc., that are very openly influenced by Russia. So one of their guys was arrested, right, for his Russian connections, etc. Isn't this more scary? Do you guys not think this is more scary? Because where do they draw? You're now relying on a reform government to tell you where the line is.
It's so bad. And I think this is like, maybe this is a bit tangential. I don't know if you saw like the news around Pokemon Go.
No?
So this news came out, I think it's like a couple days old, that Pokemon Go, the game where people go around effectively through AR catch Pokemon in the real world. The data for that has been used by a spin-off of the company that made the game. So Niantic is the other company that made the game. They've got a spin-off which I think is called Niantic Spatial, and that company is selling the data to military drone companies. So now these military drones in areas where there was poor satellite imagery or the GPS was poor, they can use this data that the public, something like 800 million people have used Pokemon Go,
Oh
played
my
Pokemon Go,
God.
can now use that for their military drones. These drones are like literally designed to kill people, kill soldiers in the battlefield, kill like they're killing machines. And so, you go for something as fun and joyful as playing Pokemon to military drones. And it's like, come on, guys, if we're taking these 25 people who have put paint on a plane, I'm sure that paint can be wiped off, right? Like, and we're trying them under terrorism, but we're allowing companies to take data which I don't know if like maybe somewhere in the terms and conditions in the smallest font possible it said we might use your data to kill people. But I'm pretty sure if most players saw that, they would be like, maybe I don't need to play Pokemon Go. Maybe I don't need to take part in this. Because now it's like I've played that game. Like my friends, my family, we like so many people have played that game, and suddenly that data is being used for military drones. It's disgusting. And it should be
It's
illegal, but it's
insane.
not.
Oh my God, it's so it honestly feels sometimes, love, like we're living in like a Black Mirror episode. Do you know what I mean? I remember watching an episode, I think it was like The Good Wife, and essentially, those genetics companies, 23andMe and those kind of things. So they were obviously it was a fictionalized, but essentially the person who had just been curious, done one of those genetic tests. The genetics company then sold that information to all of the American health insurance companies. And through that, they'd identified there was some kind of specific gene that this person had that he didn't even know he had. So they refused him further medical treatment, essentially. And actually, I mean, like, is it really that far off, love? Like, if Pokemon Go is using customer data to advance like military technology, what on earth is happening to this world, love?
It's
Like, you sent me something as well. So again, like, it's very difficult to I don't know if you guys find this, right? I don't know if other people feel the same way, but sometimes it feels really hard. Like in the old days, I feel like, you had those crazy publications, right? We'd be like, oh, UFO spotted over West Wales. People are thinking the UFOs or aliens have arrived. Like they were the kind of the conspiracy theories, like, the government made up the Loch Ness monster because they wanted to reduce tourism to that area of Scotland. Like that kind of thing was, he was kind of a bit ridiculous. Like he was the now it's like there are so many things that one would purport to be conspiracy theories that actually may not be conspiracy theories. Do you know what I mean? Like you sent me a clip the other day, which I've seen before, of Candace Owens. Obviously, Candace Owens, like love or hate, I don't really know much about her. I'm not a big fan. But anyway, Candace Owens, essentially, she's ever since Charlie Kirk died, she's been talking about how he's essentially been assassinated by the Israeli government because Charlie Kirk refused to support what Israel was doing. Just not even generally, but like specifically as well to the Palestinians and the genocide or whatever it was, right? Um, Now I was like, okay, this crazy woman, she's just rabbiting on again. This is mad. And then stuff starts coming out. Like they think that in the microphone he had, there was some kind of device planted, which actually blew up, but it actually blew up in the wrong way. It was supposed to emulate a bullet, but it didn't. And actually there was shrapnel everywhere. So then the next morning, the whole place was completely concreted over. Who was talking about this stuff?
It was a
Oh,
comedian who was doing it as a set. So yeah, very I guess anti-Israeli government in a lot of what he talks about, very pro-Palestine. But like I completely agree with everything he says. And again, like, he's so passionate about it. He's obviously, gone down rabbit holes that few would dare to go down. Um, and sort of highlighted things that have happened in plain sight, right? Because you can't concrete over uh, exposed open air public scene without people seeing it, right? And so for it to happen so soon after what was such a visible and public crime, he's like, well, what's going on? Like, the explanation doesn't make sense. And so, yeah, he's dug into it. He's done the research. Obviously, it's aligned with what Candace Owen has said. Candace Owens, has been discredited in numerous times for some of the things she comes up with, but it's one of those things where she might be right on this occasion. She may have actually found something that is credible. And I don't know. Sometimes you got to put aside uh, your preconceived ideas about a person, or even put aside some of the things that someone has said that you completely disagree with, and say, oh, well, actually, you are right about this. Like this shouldn't happen. There's no instance where typically a crime scene of that, especially of that magnitude, would just be not just swept clean, but concreted over. Like, it's insane. It doesn't make any sense. So I don't know what we do with that. Again, like, where do we go from here? Because when it's at US government level, it feels like, well, what can I as an individual do? And again, as long as the US remains a democracy, the thing you do is vote. That's what you do.
That's so powerful of us. So I think it was the comedian Sami Obedi, I think his name is. And let me ask you, Love. So the other person as well, again, to your point about preconceived ideas, who's been absolutely rather insanely appearing on my feed for the algorithm is Tucker Carlson.
I knew you were going to say Tucker.
Yeah, what do you think? Like, what is going on?
I struggle because obviously, the likes of Tucker Carlson are the reason why we have Trump in power today. So I'm reluctant to sort of just, wash him clean and say, okay, well, your sins are forgiven, because it's we're still dealing with the ramifications of the actions and decisions and promotion that you did. Um, so I guess I'm still at a place where the original sin is too great. Like, you may be saying the right things now, and if you are changing the minds of the audience you still have, then that is good. I'm not going to support you. I'm not going to promote your work like in overly and in an unnecessary way. But good for you. And maybe at some point, if I see that you're not just a mercenary, that you're not just going from one to the other, like backing whatever horse you think is going to win, as opposed to actually, supporting
Exactly.
the stable and being in there for the long term, maybe at that point I'll say, okay, actually, you have actually, turned the leaf. Um, but yeah, until then, I'm like, ugh, the stench of Trump is too powerful on you. It's too prominent.
It's so true, isn't it, Love? I'm with you 100% on that, I'd say. Because I think Mehdi Hassan covered this really well on Zateo, but I think both with Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. So obviously Tucker, which again, because the news moves so fast, it's hard to remember these things, but he was actually a very prominent host on Fox News. So he was hugely complicit in the propaganda machine that got Trump elected. He was a massive Trump supporter. He's pretty racist as well, guy. Candace Owens, again, she was the convenient black face of the MAGA movement. She was clearly exploited because then they can't be racist and they can't be this and that because we have a black person, right? A little bit like Kemi in the Conservative Party and Zia Youssef in Reform. But I agree with you. Like, even though they unfortunately keep appearing on my feed, I think the thing that maybe is the separation, isn't it, Love? Is it's not so much that we're like, wow, Tucker's saying this or Candace is saying that. It's just that you're finally saying it. Like, if you believe in what is being said, so for example, if you believe in what Candace and Tucker are saying with regards to the atrocities being committed in Palestine, then follow people like Mehdi Hassan, who's been saying this consistently for years, right? Even on Piers Morgan the other day, he was trying to sort of say to Kellyanne Conway, who's just a hideous human being, who's also now conveniently turned, to the Palestinian cause, but saying to like, but I've been saying for ages. I'm like, no, bruv, you have not been saying for ages. Mehdi Hassan has been saying for ages, and you've finally listened to what he's been saying all along, because now you've seen the proof points for themselves, right? And I think I'm with you on that. Like, I'm really, really deeply skeptical of people like MTG and Candace and Tucker and even Kellyanne Conway now is suddenly a huge kind of, anti-genocide person. Please do me a favor. I don't believe. I'm so skeptical. Like Fabian says, like I feel like if the tide shifts again, are you going to flip flop again?
This is it.
I'd love to see that people's actions speak louder than their words. Honestly, that's going to be the real test for me too. But yeah, it was interesting because again, sorry, we kind of diverted, but I guess like again, there was an article that came out this week that purported that the reason that Cenk and Hassan Piker were both not allowed entry into the UK was because of the influence of a lobbying group within the Labour government that was very pro-Israel.
Right.
And therefore, that's why they were expelled, essentially. I think I have probably been one of those people that's like, oh, yeah, see, in America, they've got AIPAC and look how much power. Look, I mean, Trump literally went to war because Marco Rubio said that, Netanyahu told him to attack Iran and he attacked Iran. And now I'm a bit like, oh, actually, I didn't really know that we had the same thing here, to be honest with you, which is quite disturbing,
But
love.
that's it. That's why I'm just wondering, like, do we go down this rabbit hole and like dig into it? Because clearly, you know, it's almost like credit to America that they're just blatant about that. Yeah, foreign money is coming in. We have these lobbying groups. That's just how we do business. Whereas in the UK, it's almost like it's all like swept under the carpet. It's all done like behind closed doors, but it's still happening. And so I don't know what's worse. Like in a democracy, should it be like visible corruption or,
Yeah.
like we have in America, or the invisible corruption that we have in the UK? Like what do you choose out of the two evils,
And I'm sure there'll be people that come back on us and say, oh, but you're anti-Israel, you're anti-Semitic. And I think the thing is, love, like, it's very easy to throw out anti-Semitism now as an attack on any kind of criticism or holding of account, really, to the government of Israel. But I think that you only need to see what's happening, right? You don't need to listen to us. Come on, like who are we? You don't need to believe us. I think that if you actually watch the Israeli state media, if you actually listen to what the Israeli ministers are saying and what they're actually doing, if you're seeing the videos of when the aid workers were finally allowed in and you saw a Gaza that was flattened, like completely flattened, if you are watching the incursion into Lebanon, so not just in the area that Hezbollah purportedly controlled, but Beirut, which is the capital of Lebanon. Lebanon has no army, by the way, to defend themselves. If you see the map in the book, The Future is Peace, if you see the map of what was supposed to be the Israeli state and then the Palestinian state, and then you see how it's been growing and growing and growing, effectively to the point where Palestine hasn't really existed for a long time, right? Like if you went on Google Maps and you put in Palestine, nothing came up, right? Like ever. So like I think it's very difficult when you see the evidence for yourself and then you're being asked to ignore your eyes and ears. You're being asked to burn the books and hide the evidence. And as someone who has very deeply taken to heart the learnings that we had taught to us about the Holocaust and fascism and the rise of the Nazis and the playbook that the Nazi government had used, it's very difficult to now then tell people just forget all of that. Forget it. Don't just ignore it because we don't mean in this situation. So we meant never again, but just not never again for us, because actually it's okay if we do it. And I think that's where it's very difficult, because that's why even with the ridiculous charges of terrorism for these 5 protesters, they didn't harm anybody. It was a business. They hit a couple of drones for frick's sake. And even then they didn't burn the building down, right? They pushed over some shelves and they put a hammer to a drone or whatever. And again, I know we're talking in nuance here, but like we are at the stage now where British citizens are continuing to exercise the democratic right to protest, to say that actually what the actions are happening in Palestine are wrong. They're being arrested, love. They're being charged as terrorists, and then they're being equivocated to the far right and being like, oh, but they're protesting. No, they're not protesting. They're rioting. They're destroying places and homes and making people unsafe, like, and not just people of color, right? People in Southampton were frightened to leave their homes when this mob descended. Like, trying to equivocate those two is again one of the many reasons that I cannot stand mainstream media, because this false equivalence.
And I think to your point, you know, what we saw in Belfast was, people's homes burning, and not just black people, not just people from Sudan that had migrated to Belfast. They showed one woman who had taken her family out of the Ukraine as a result of Russia invading, coming to Belfast, and then her home being burned. She's having to move out. And so it's a crazy thing to sort of say that, the media over here isn't condemning this. And thankfully, we have, I don't know if you saw the pictures of the people doing the anti-racism demonstration in
Yeah,
Brighton, in Glasgow. Like Fatboy Slim came out in Brighton and demonstrated
yeah,
against that.
no.
Like beautiful, peaceful protests, and that should be like praised. This is the picture of Britain that we need to go out across the world. That actually this isn't us. We reject these guys in balaclavas coming in, throwing fire bombs, like attacking the police, burning down buildings, taking innocent people out of their homes, young people spreading terror. Like those are the terrorists, right? Not, these 25 people breaking into, a military building.
Criminal damage, yes. Trespassing, yes.
It's not
Um,
terrorism. It's not
totally makes
terrorism.
sense. It is not terrorism, and I do not care what broad-based nonsense you have in the legislation, which is a frightening catch-all for the state of things to come. Because what is next? Like I say, like, what is next? The Americans are protesting against data centers that are polluting their community.
Uh,
Is that an ideological thing? Now we're against AI. So are you going to call us terrorists too? Because we're taking to the streets and maybe people are throwing things at a data center build or something. And we're like, oh no, like somebody was saying earlier, like the suffragettes would essentially have been charged as terrorists
100%. Yeah.
for their actions. Like, and I know, and the thing is, love, I know as a lay person that these things are incredibly complex and there is significant nuance between these situations. So people trying to equivocate these broad things, left, right, blah, 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 like we don't need that. But as a government that is supposed to represent the interests of the people, you have a deep responsibility to make sure that you use these powers very judiciously and very, very carefully. And I think that's what this government and many governments before, because Sajid Javid was the one who stripped Shamima Begum of her citizenship. Now, don't get me wrong, she's a scumbag, she's a piece of shit, but she's our piece of shit. She should have been brought back to the UK and put straight into prison for the rest of her life. Yes, it's a cost to us, but she's British. Like it's our people. We got to take care of our people. But instead, they found a loophole way of stripping her of her citizenship. But anyway, so yeah, to that point, I mean, I suppose we've covered lots of things, I guess, in this today. But yeah, it was really heartening, love, to see the anti-racism protesters really standing up en masse, by the way, compared to people in Brighton, to your point, in Glasgow. And I think that, there is so much, like, this is such a great country. It's okay to say that times have been getting tougher, because they have. They have been getting tougher ever since Brexit, in particular, the financial crash in 2008. Things have been getting tougher. But things have been getting tougher, particularly since Brexit and the pandemic, for the vast majority of people, but not for the billionaires and the multimillionaires and the corporations that have been doing brilliantly well, right? So, like, all we're saying is redirect your ire to the people that really are causing the challenge. And the reason I think the government is struggling in this point, in this moment in time, is because the corporations wield so much power. The multimillionaires and the billionaires wield so much power that you can't talk about them to them, say something. Like, I'll give you an example, the minimum wage, right? So we push the minimum wage up, we increase NI contributions for the corporations, or at least businesses. Now businesses are saying, oh, well, then see, I told you I'd stop investing. Of course, I'm not hiring young people because I told you it's too expensive. And I was like, no, wait a second. No, just to be clear. So, like, the M&S boss was saying that. And then you go further down, you're like, oh, M&S made £1.6 billion in profit last year. It's not a problem of profit. The issue is that it will prohibit you from making the 10 to 15% increase in profit that you want to make.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's not that you don't have the capacity to do it. It's that the corporate capitalist system, the greed, is preventing you from doing so.
And I think it would be remiss of us not to mention, obviously, we're recording on Sunday, Friday, SpaceX had its IPO, resulting in Elon Musk becoming the world's first trillionaire. Um, I, I guess we often try to make sense of what a billion is. And so 1,000,000 seconds is 11 days. 1,000,000,000 seconds is something like 32 years. 1,000,000,000,000 seconds is something like 36,000 years. Seconds, yeah? Seconds is what we're talking about. So someone shared that the average US worker is closer in wealth to the second wealthiest person in the world than the second wealthiest person in the world is to Elon Musk now that he's a trillionaire. That's the gap. So, we are taking, I guess, direction from a guy that appears on a screen at a Tommy Robinson far-right march, and he's cheering on the fact that we've got these people protesting migrants, some of the poorest people in the world who are looking for some hope, some salvation. This guy's cheering on when inflation is increasing at such a rapid rate. So many of us are struggling with the cost of living, and yet this guy has become by far the wealthiest person in the world in modern history. What are we doing, people? Like, why are we taking advice from this guy? Like, he's not trying to help you. Everything he's done is to make himself wealthier. So if you're listening to him thinking, oh, this is good advice for me, no, it's not. Like, SpaceX, the valuation of SpaceX is based on its AI capabilities. And so, look, please do your own research. But a lot of people have taken the time to look into it and said, it's actually not about rockets going into space. It's about the data centers and the fact that it can be used to power AI. So this is all part of one big AI bubble. Now, the bubble hasn't burst, and maybe it continues to grow. But at some point, like, people, look, do your research. Like, Nvidia is giving money to SpaceX. SpaceX is giving money back to Nvidia. Like, Google is giving money to. It's all just a Ponzi scheme, just circles of money going round and round. None of it makes sense. A lot of these companies aren't making any sort of profit, and yet, like, billions are being spent on a regular basis. It's just weird and disgusting. It shouldn't be allowed, and ultimately, the taxpayer is going to pay for it.
100%. And I saw something someone was saying the other day, like, I thought it was really clever. I forget, please forgive me, whoever it was, if you ever come across this, please, source it, because I can't remember. But he was basically saying, whenever it comes to taxing corporations, they say, oh, no, don't do that, because then they're going to stop investing and they're going to stop creating jobs. When it comes to taxing multimillionaires and billionaires, and they say, no, don't do that, because they're going to stop investing and they stop creating jobs. And then when it comes to AI, when people say, but it looks like AI is going to take jobs, then they say, oh, but, what can we do? Like, it is what it is, really. And you're like, I heard someone say this the other day, and I was like, mate, that is just spot on.
Exactly that. It's exactly that.
It's exactly.
There's two things I just want to quickly cover because I think it would be remiss of us not to mention it. So, firstly, we spoke about Claude, Anthropic. They released Mythos to the public alongside another model called Fable. And then within, I think, a day or two, I can't remember how long it was, but the US government said, no, this is too dangerous to be allowed to go out to the public. And so Anthropic had to retract it and bring it back in. We spoke about Mythos because its capabilities of hacking and cybersecurity, massive vulnerabilities, and Anthropic spent, I don't know, what I think it was like maybe 2 or 3 months trying to make it something that they felt like was suitable for the general public to have access to, working with a number of tech companies, including Google, Microsoft, and those guys. Um, it kind of makes me wonder whether or not this is still the US government saying, hey, you've spoken out against us, you haven't allowed us to use Anthropic for military usage, so we're going to continue to have you on this blacklist, despite sort of saying that you can be taken off it. And so I do wonder whether there's more to it than is presented, or maybe it is, as the US government says, it is too dangerous. But having been made public for 2 days, that might be enough time for a foreign state to distill it and make it something that they use in their own version of AI package. So it might already be too late, but who knows? But that's the world we're living in at the moment. And my final point is, like, this is also the US government that I think yesterday had a UFC fight on the lawn of the White House. And so again, people are saying it's not the White House anymore, it's the white trash house. It's just like it's just become this like horrible, disgusting thing. When a clown enters the palace, the clown doesn't become a king, the palace becomes a circus.
Genius.
And it's exactly that, right? It's
Genius.
like it's just theater. It's just we mentioned it last week. It's when you're in the last ages of empire, and the emperor is trying to distract the citizens with these gladiatorial matches. This is not a functioning nation. It's wrong, and hopefully, when it comes time for U.S. citizens to vote, they vote for a more sensible, grown-up, coherent person to lead the country.
I really desperately hope so, honestly. But who knows? To be honest, because I think the Democrats aren't helping themselves because they're in a bit of a mess. The candidates that seem to be winning are the ones that are espousing democratic socialist policies. So just platform the policies, platform making that people are held accountable so that you have something to actually vote for. Because I think that's part of the problem. People are so disillusioned with this system and this state. But yeah, it's a great question on Mythos, love, because I'm the same as you. I'm a little bit torn. Part of me is like, is this again just further punishment in their attempts to monetize? Because Anthropic are also going to IPO as well because they need money because it's expensive. So that again, unfortunately, is a very sad, dangerous position to be in because they actually had value. So I'm sure that's going to go out the window. But then the other thing I think also part of me wonders as well, like, is this just propaganda? Like, why do we not think that China or Russia have developed a Mythos level AI, right? Maybe they haven't, maybe because they're not private organizations, they didn't release it and advertise it and talk about it, but maybe they already have it. Like, we don't know, right? Like, we kind of just assume because the Americans love to say that they're the forefront of everything. Yeah, I don't know really. But I think the thing for me, love, is I keep going back to what I think I was telling you, like, so they ran these AI tests, right? And then they had these AI agents performing tasks. And then what they did was flood the agents with more and more and more and more tasks. To the point where the AI agents effectively started researching Marxist theory. And then the AI agents started pushing back on the exploitative nature of what's happening to them, the system, the workload. And then somebody made a comment on the article, was like, "Are you trying to tell me that AI has achieved class consciousness before we have?" And I feel like that just plays a loop in my head. Every time I see these stupid riots and the world's first trillionaire egging people on to go and attack people that have such little, and people who have struggled, especially in the last sort of 10 years since the architect of Brexit, Farage, is now purporting to be the person that will solve the problem that he created with Brexit. And he's the anti-establishment hero, despite the fact he's a multi-millionaire banker, lifetime politician, bought and paid for by donors. And I sometimes sit there and think, guys, help me understand. Like, we are an intelligent species. And I don't mean intelligence as in academic qualifications. I mean intelligence, the capability to perform critical reasoning. Like, sit back and really ask yourself the question: does somebody who is a trillionaire, and that's trillion, I saw someone say is like 2 millions, like the number of 6 millions and zero and add another 6 millions, is that person capable of understanding and representing your interests? Not least because he could have solved the global poverty crisis, and indeed the poverty crisis in this country, like overnight, given the amount of money he has, by the way. Is the person that is so rich and bought by so many donors, are they really the ones that understand your struggle? Is the person that voted against your workers' rights bill, i.e., to give you more secure employment, to bring trade unions back, to be able to not have no fault hirings, to protect you from landlords with no fault evictions, is the person that voted against all of those things really the anti establishment person you think he is? Really? Like, come on, guys. You're better than this. Seriously. I think we could probably end it there, love. But yeah, just to say our heart goes out. I think it's fair for Fabian and I to say our heart really goes out to the people in the affected communities at the hands of the violence that you've seen in your communities. And our huge heart goes out to the anti-racism protesters and the anti-fascism protesters in Brighton and Glasgow and Belfast that have been pushing back against all of the hatred. We're just so grateful to you, and we're so proud of what you're doing, and the bravery of you as well to take yourself off and actually do that as well. So thank you so much, because when it feels really, really dark, there are so many incredibly beautiful people in our country and around the world that do such great things. So thank you.
Yeah, well, so thank you guys. Until next week. Bye bye.